If you are showing up and doing all the things, creating the content, booking sales calls, delivering for clients, and you still are not making the sales that you want to make, there is very likely a bottleneck or a leak somewhere in your lead generation strategy. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to find that leak in your lead generation strategy and start to fix it. So if you have not been following along, we are doing a series here on the podcast and on my YouTube channel where we are walking through how to double your CEO paycheck. And in each of the 5 videos, I have been walking you through each of the little individual components that I would help you think about. If you came to me and said, Sarah, I want to take home more pay for my business, I want to increase profitability, I want to double my CEO paycheck, what do I have to do? So I highly recommend that you go back and check out all of the videos starting from video number 1. We are also working on this in the Profit Plan Challenge, which as of the date this video comes out, we will be in the middle of the challenge, but it is not too late to join if you still want to join in, because I will keep the videos live for at least another week after this comes out. You can join the Profit Plan Challenge at trustyoungco.com/challenge or click the link in the description. And every day for 5 days, I will give you a lesson, a workbook, and prompts to help you map out a 90-day profit plan that will help you to grow your business, increase your profitability, and ultimately double your CEO paycheck. And on day 1 of the challenge, we're going to be focused on business health and identifying where you have a bottleneck in your business. And at a very high level, if we zoom way out, I would say that most people's bottlenecks in their business at a high level come from one of 3 places. It's either their offer structure and delivery model, which we talked about 2 episodes ago in this series. It is in their sales process or not selling, if they're not selling more consistently enough, which we talked about last week. And then bottleneck number 3 is in lead generation, which is another way of saying marketing. In this video, I want to talk about if your lead generation strategy is the bottleneck. If you're just not generating enough leads coming into your business to then convert into sales, into paying clients, and then deliver with your offers, obviously we need to focus on more leads. Before we talk about that in detail, I have another client story. This was from a few years ago, but it was probably the best example I have of incorrectly identifying their bottleneck in their business. So this was a service-based business, or is a service-based business. They were in the wedding industry, and this client was running ads to bring in more local clients in the area that she worked in, who she wanted to ultimately get them to book a sales call. And she was getting some clients from it, but honestly, her ad spend was not giving her a really great return in terms of new leads. When we zoomed out and we looked at, okay, here's where all your clients are coming from, maybe in total, the revenue was a good number compared to the ad spend. But when we actually broke down the revenue and said, okay, where are each of these clients coming from? Who is actually coming from the ads and who's coming from elsewhere? And that ROI directly from the ads was not really that good. And so we dug into why, because she was saying to us, she said, I really feel like I just want to spend more money on ads. I want to turn up my ad spend because I need more leads. And we said, time out. Before we go and throw more money into ads, we want to really make sure that we understand where the bottleneck actually is. And so we sat down and sort of mapped everything out. And what we found was that her bottleneck in this case was not necessarily in lead generation, in the top of funnel strategy to get her business in front of more ideal clients. It actually ended up being in her conversion rate. So her sales conversion rate for people who are booking calls was actually pretty low. So the conclusion that we came to was that before we spent more money on ads, we needed to tighten up the conversion rate, because without spending more money, if she could increase the conversion rate, she's going to make more sales with the same ad spend. Increasing your conversion rate comes from a few different things, but it starts in your lead generation process. So a good lead generation process is going to get you in front of ideal clients consistently. It is going to establish your authority and expertise. It is going to build the know, like, and trust factor with your ideal clients, preferably with nurture content that brings them through your funnel. And it is going to qualify them so that they know you are talking to them when they see your marketing collateral, right? I have had multiple clients say to me, I felt like you're reading my mind when we're on the sales call. Or I've had people who say, I felt like your content was speaking directly to me, and that is on purpose. So we'll talk about that more in a second. But a good lead generation strategy, again, is going to attract your ideal client, build authority and expertise, and pre-qualify clients before they even get to a sales call. So let's talk about the elements of a good marketing strategy. You're going to hear me use the words marketing strategy and lead generation strategy interchangeably because in my opinion, I'm sure there's people out there who would say they're different things, but in my opinion, the sole purpose of marketing is to generate leads. And actually, marketing is really not even the same as sales. So marketing, if you have a fully built out multi-million-dollar business, you're probably going to have a marketing department that does all of the attract, nurture, and sales content that generates the leads that then come through, and then your sales team picks it up and takes them from that point to where they are a lead to when they are closed and actually a paying client. So at a high level, there are 4 key parts to a good lead generation strategy. Number 1 is messaging. Number 2 is visibility. Number 3 is nurture content. And number 4 is sales. And when I say number 4 is sales, I don't mean the sales process. I mean the content that invites people in to start the sales process, that gets them to raise their hand and say, that's me. I'm going to fill out your lead generation form or your inquiry form and start the process, or visit your sales page and start the process of becoming a client. So before you build out complicated funnels, you need to nail down these 4 areas. So let's talk about each of these 4 areas in detail. And this is something that I teach in the High Profit Society. You probably know by now, my background is accounting. I had to learn, like every other business owner, I had to learn marketing and sales because that was not something that I had ever learned in my corporate days or in my education. Even though I was a business major and I took marketing classes, it was not my concentration. And so I never wanted really to teach marketing content until I got into people's businesses and realized that a large chunk of their profitability issues comes from inconsistent cash flow, which comes from not having the right marketing and sales strategies in their businesses. And so I never claimed to be like the absolute biggest marketing and sales guru out there, but I have built a fairly successful business, and I like to think that I know a thing or two about how to market and sell to people, if I say so myself. Okay, so number 1, messaging. Messaging really is all of the things that you talk about, the language that you use, the way that you paint the picture for your clients, for your potential clients. It's everything from your brand, from your copy, to just the specific words you use and the stories that you tell. The goal of messaging, and I think the thing that people really need to practice at, is we want to speak our potential clients' language, not our language. And so what comes naturally to us, especially if you are an expert in the area that you provide services in, as an expert, your language is going to be very different from someone who is not an expert in what you do, does not have the education and experience that you have, but they need what you are an expert in. And so when you talk about things, you probably, without even realizing it, can be speaking way over people's heads. It's also really hard, I think, sometimes when we are such an expert to just put ourselves in our clients' shoes and to be thinking about the day-to-day experiences that they have, the emotions that they experience, like what is it that actually happens to them that causes their problems, and how does their life change with the results that we provide in our services. For me, the best thing that I can say to anybody who wants to improve their messaging is to have more conversations with people. The more conversations that you have with real people who are ideal clients, I should say, I don't mean have conversations with your husband or your family if they're not ideal clients for what you're selling, because they're going to be very biased and they're not going to give you good messaging. But listen to what people say. Listen to the way that they describe their problems and their current experiences and how that's impacting their day-to-day life and their day-to-day reality. Start to listen to the words that they use And those are the words that you are going to pick up and start using in your messaging as you're speaking to clients. Remember that your content is not for you, it's for your potential client. So make sure that you are on their wavelength, speaking their language, really trying to resonate with their emotions and their experience. Number 2 is visibility. And I would say that visibility means getting your business in front of new eyeballs that have not heard you before. And those eyeballs need to be in the heads of people who are ideal clients. So not just putting yourself in front of anybody, but trying to put yourself in front of an audience of your ideal client. So asking yourself, where do they live? Where do they hang out? This is where I think the messaging and like putting yourselves in their shoes really helps, because you can ask in their day-to-day life, where can I insert myself to get in front of them and start having conversations with my ideal client in order to generate more leads. This is probably the area where most people struggle the most to be consistent at in their entire lead generation strategy. And I think that people struggle with visibility because of mindset issues around actually being visible, with being seen as an expert, as an authority, with putting yourself out there and potentially failing. Like there's so many mindset things that can come up with putting yourself in front of a bigger audience. I also see a lot of people who start posting more on social media, who start a podcast or a YouTube channel and just say like, by creating this content by default, I'm going to get in front of more people. And that may or may not actually be true, depending on how you structure your content and depending on whether or not the algorithm likes your content and pushes it out to people who are new to your audience. So visibility, I think, is something that we need to be doing on a consistent basis. I actually have 2 challenges in the High Profit Society that get to this. One is the 100 Touch Challenge, and then one is, we did this last year for the first time, was a visibility challenge where I challenge people just to put themselves out there every single day on a more consistent basis. I like to break this down in terms of one-on-one visibility and one-to-many visibility. Always start with a one-on-one visibility and get really good at that and hone in your messaging via these one-on-one conversations before we go into the more leveraged visibility opportunities. But the one-on-one visibility would be networking and referrals, where you are in person or online, I guess, meeting with people that you don't know, or getting referrals from current clients or people in your network who meet people who would be a good fit for your services. One-on-one could also include cold outreach, which I know is one that a lot of people don't like to do, but it is a thing that people use to generate leads because it works. You may have a lower conversion rate, so you have to do a higher volume to close the same number of sales, but cold outreach does work, and I would put that in the one-to-one bucket of visibility strategies. One-to-many visibility strategies are going to include things like content, when your content is getting in front of new eyeballs on social media platforms. So if your content is not getting pushed out to new people, then I would not put that in the bucket of attract or visibility content. Speaking, workshops, podcast interviews are great examples of one-to-many visibility strategies. Ads also fall into this bucket because you're going to be paying to put yourself in front of a new cold audience. SEO is also a great one, where you will show up in search rankings either in places like Google or YouTube, or even TikTok and Instagram has been talking about how they want to increase their platform's SEO capabilities. Next up is nurture content. And really, I say nurture content because I do think that most nurture marketing strategies are going to revolve around some sort of content creation. My favorite and most simple strategy that I like to use is having one primary long-form content platform. Long-form content being what you're watching right now, so YouTube videos or podcasts or even blogs count, email newsletters even count. But when I work with clients who are feeling overloaded and they don't feel like they can add a ton of work to their plate for marketing, what I tell them is focus your energy on creating one piece of weekly or maybe bi-weekly content that builds your expertise, showcases your expertise, your client case studies, testimonials, showcases your authority, builds the trust factor. It allows people to get to know you faster. Focus your energy on creating good long-form content and then have your team take that content and then repurpose it into content for other platforms so that you're not creating a million different things every single week. You're really just focusing all of your energy and brain power into one channel that you can even batch and spend 1 to 2 days a month creating content for that channel, and then your marketing, your nurture content is done. And then the last piece is sales content, separately from the actual sales process. But what I mean by having sales content in your lead generation strategy is getting clear on how you are going to invite people to take the next step into working with you. And so this is everything from the way that you design and message your sales call. So I personally really like to use, especially for high ticket service providers, a microservice funnel, which I have a whole video about and will link in the description. But it could be everything from how you position those actual sales calls to how you create a lead magnet that then directly invites people and speaks to the first part of your framework that gets people into your sales process and then invites them to take the next step, whether that's booking a sales call or joining some other sales engine. Having a sales engine, I think, is really important. And what a sales engine is, the way that I like to define it, is the way that you are going to make sales. And so a really great sales engine could be a sales call. It could be a masterclass. It could be a challenge. It's some sort of thing that you're probably actively going to have to participate in to get people into your offers. And so your sales content is going to be the content that gets them to take that step, to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm going to take the next step. So having a strategy around what that sales content is going to be, what are the types of things that you can share and where are you going to share it? Where are you going to invite people in to take the next step, and making sure you build that in probably to your nurture content, probably also into your website, and making those like very clear call to actions and giving people a clear path to follow so that when someone goes through your lead generation process and they are pre-qualified because you have been speaking to them with your messaging, when they are convinced that your offer that is the thing for them, that you and your team are the experts for them, they need what you have to sell, that they know exactly where to take the next step, and they feel the urgency to take that next step now versus waiting until later. All right, so we've talked about the 4 parts of an effective lead generation strategy. I'm going to make a guess that you probably have a gap in the visibility portion and potentially also in the sales portion. So your homework from this episode is to take 10 minutes, map out that one lead generation strategy from top to bottom, and then figure out what pieces you need to put into place to get it to be complete and execute it on it consistently. And ask yourself, where do I feel like I potentially have a gap in my strategy, and what are some ways that I can close it? Whether that means you have to go read some books, listen to some podcasts, learn some skills to learn how to close that gap. Now you have some clarity around where that gap is in your strategy. But if I could give one final piece of advice, it would be to not overcomplicate this step. It's really easy to try to build a huge funnel and to put out a whole bunch of different lead magnets and to try to show up on all different kinds of content channels and to try to do all the things until you figure out what it is that's finally going to work. But I think instead of doing that, because by doing that, you spread yourself too thin and it becomes really hard to maintain consistency. What we want to do instead is focus on one channel, focus on one path, because it'll be more simple if you have one clear path. When you have less things to do, you're more likely to be more consistent at what you're doing, at executing on your lead generation strategy over the long run. And with consistency comes the clarity to know what's working and what's not. I think that honestly, marketing is less about fancy, sexy strategies. And I think it's more about the consistency of just showing up over and over again, building trust with your audience, with your community, and making them aware of what you have to sell. So if we apply that piece of advice to the lead generation strategy, asking yourself, okay, for visibility purposes, what is the one place that I can get in front of new ideal clients on a consistent basis. Where do they hang out and how can I put myself in front of them regularly? Second is for nurture content. What is the channel where I can create long form content? What is going to be the best channel for my business and for my clients to consume? And then start creating that content, preferably on a weekly basis, but putting your energy into creating that content before you then have your team, or even you, if you have the capacity to batch create, but turning that into content for other platforms to share more widely, but focusing on the long form content first. And then what is the sales engine? Is it going to be a sales call? Is it going to be some sort of quarterly masterclass or challenge or something along those lines to get people excited and move them along in your funnel? And as a final reminder, if you need help doing this, this is exactly the point of the Profit Plan Challenge, where over 5 days, we're going to map out a 90-day profit plan so you have a complete business growth strategy from top to bottom. You've identified the gaps in your business. You've identified what's working and what's not so that you can take the next steps forward. And if you are ready to get yourself on the path to financial freedom as a business owner, I do want to invite you to apply for the High Profit Society, which is my community for business owners who are growing their businesses and building wealth. Inside, we've got a ton of resources, frameworks, and advisory support from me and my team, and a really great community to support you in building wealth with more confidence and clarity. You can apply at trustyoungco.com/society. That's all I got for this week, y'all, and this series on the podcast. So I hope that you enjoyed it and got a lot of good tidbits and advice for you to be able to double your CEO paycheck. And with that, I'll see you back next week.